Jury selection is set to begin this month in the trial of Robert Bowers, the man accused in the mass shooting at a Squirrel Hill synagogue that killed 11 worshipers and wounded 4 others.
For 4 long years, the victims' families have waited for justice, though they are divided on whether the gunman should face the death penalty. The defendant's lawyer has made a career of defending some of the most infamous mass killers in U.S. history and will come to court trying to convince the jury to spare his life.
KDKA investigator Andy Sheehan looks at what those cases reveal about the lawyer and her methods.
Judy, any strategy in terms of suppression here? She doesn't talk to reporters, but it's clear that defense attorney Judy Clark has one singular drive: to prevent high-profile murder suspects from receiving the death penalty. And she's mostly been successful, obtaining plea bargains for the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, the Atlanta Olympics bomber Eric Rudolph, and Tucson mass shooter Jared Lee Lochner. She convinced the jury not to impose the death penalty on Susan Smith, the woman who drowned her 2 children in a lake in South Carolina in 1994. Now in Pittsburgh, she'll try to do the same for accused synagogue shooter Robert Bowers.
This is not a case in which it is likely there to be any contest about what happened. But the question is what should happen to this defendant.
Even though there's little question of the synagogue gunman's guilt, law professor Bruce Ankoviak says over the next few months, federal prosecutors will present in horrific and excruciating detail the cold-blooded killing of 11 innocent worshipers, building a case that the gunman should pay the ultimate price for premeditated murder on a mass scale.
The notion that this was a very well-calculated effort. This was not something that just was a spur-of-the-moment matter by the defendant. This was planned. This was carried out.
But as is her practice, Clark will mostly allow that testimony and evidence without objection. According to Ankoviak, it's only the penalty phase of the trial where she'll ask the jury to spare the gunman's life by trying to humanize him.
We are not here to try to tell you that the act was not inhuman and that the defendant's conduct was not inhumane. But we are going to show you that this defendant is a human being, and we are going to try to humanize them as much as possible.
But in her last high-profile trial, Clark's strategy failed. A jury convicted Dohar Tsarnaev of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing and voted for the death penalty, despite Clark's defense that he was only a troubled teenager who was under the spell of his older brother who planned the assault. Humanizing Robert Bowers would appear to be an even more daunting task. Over the past 4 years, the government has accused Clark of needlessly delaying the trial with a constant flurry of motions and evidentiary requests. Some believe she's taken that time to meet with the gunman in the Butler County Jail to delve into his background. And a recent court filing gives a clue to what that defense will look like. It maintains that the gunman, quote, suffers from schizophrenia, epilepsy, and structural and functional impairments of his brain. This week, Clark asked the court and the Justice Department to void the death penalty, but even though Governor Shapiro has extended a moratorium on executions in the state, this does not apply to federal cases.